Welcome back to the Awakening with Kelvin podcast, the podcast that dives deep into the heart of the challenges and opportunities facing Africa today. I am your host, Kelvin, and today we continue our transformative series, Bridges to Prosperity. In our last two episodes, we confronted the issues of corruption and conflict of interest in Africa, two pervasive problems that have long hampered our development efforts and compromised our collective future. Today, we are going to build on those discussions by exploring why it is crucial to have strong legal frameworks and ethical leadership to combat these challenges. We'll unpack the importance of transparency, accountability, and how these elements contribute to a thriving, prosperous Africa. So grab a seat, get comfortable, and let's embark on this journey together. Let's begin by reflecting on why corruption and conflict of interest are so damaging to our societies. Imagine a country where public funds are meant to build hospitals and schools, but instead they end up lining the pockets of a few powerful individuals. Or consider a situation where business contracts are not awarded based on merit, but on personal connections or under-the-table deals. What do these scenarios create? They breed inequality, injustice, and resentment. Corruption and conflicts of interest undermine the fundamental principles of fairness and equity, which are essential for any society to thrive. When resources are misallocated due to corruption, the most vulnerable populations suffer the most. It's not just about money being lost, it's about lives being lost due to inadequate health care, poor education, and lack of infrastructure. But why do we emphasize strong legal frameworks and leadership as solutions? Part 1. The power of strong legal frameworks. Strong legal frameworks are the bedrock of any successful society. They serve as a set of rules that everyone, regardless of their status or wealth, must follow. A robust legal framework ensures that laws are not just words on paper but actionable mandates that govern behavior, deter wrongdoing, and uphold justice. However, in many parts of Africa, the legal frameworks designed to prevent corruption and manage conflicts of interest are either insufficient or poorly enforced. This often leads to a lack of accountability and fosters an environment where unethical behavior can thrive. Let's consider the case of Botswana, often cited as a success story in Africa when it comes to combating corruption. What sets Botswana apart? It has developed a comprehensive anti-corruption legal framework that includes strong laws, effective enforcement agencies, and a judiciary that is largely independent and free from political interference. This framework is supported by a transparent public procurement process and a commitment to public financial management. The result: Botswana consistently ranks as one of the least corrupt countries in Africa. On the other hand, countries with weak legal frameworks or those where laws are selectively enforced often see high levels of corruption and conflict of interest. In such environments, laws are manipulated to serve the interests of the few rather than the many, and justice becomes a commodity for sale. So how do we strengthen our legal frameworks across the continent? First, draft clear and comprehensive laws. Laws must be clear, unambiguous, and cover all aspects of public and private sector governance. Second, ensure independence of the judiciary. A legal system is only as strong as its ability to enforce the law impartially. Judicial independence is critical to ensure that no one is above the law. Third, establish specialized anti-corruption agencies. Agencies dedicated to combating corruption and managing conflicts of interest need to be empowered with the authority and resources to investigate and prosecute without fear of reprisal. Fourth, promote civic education and awareness. Citizens must be aware of their rights and the laws that govern them. This empowers them to hold leaders accountable and demand transparency. Legal frameworks are not just about punishment, they are about prevention. They provide the guidelines and set the standards for acceptable behavior, which is crucial in any fight against corruption. Part 2, the role of ethical leadership. Now let's turn our attention to leadership. A strong legal framework is only as effective as the people who uphold it. This is where ethical leadership comes into play. Leadership in both the public and private sectors is about more than just making decisions. It's about setting the tone for governance and corporate ethics. When leaders demonstrate integrity, transparency, and accountability, they inspire others to do the same. It creates a ripple effect, fostering a culture where ethical behavior becomes the norm, not the exception. Let's examine the example of Rwanda. Under President Paul Kagam's leadership, Rwanda has made significant strides in promoting transparency and fighting corruption. The Rwandan government has implemented rigorous anti-corruption measures, streamlined public service delivery, and fostered a culture of accountability that permeates all levels of government. As a result, Rwanda is often cited as one of the least corrupt countries in Africa and a model for good governance. However, the opposite is also true. When leaders are corrupt, it sends a signal to others that such behavior is acceptable. This creates a toxic environment where corruption becomes systemic and ethical behavior is punished rather than rewarded. Kelvin Phiri leadership matters because it sets the standard. If leaders are transparent and act in the public interest, it builds trust and confidence among citizens. However, if they engage in corrupt practices or condone conflicts of interest, it erodes trust and undermines democratic institutions. Part 3, building a culture of transparency and accountability. So how do we cultivate a culture of transparency and accountability across Africa? It starts with recognizing that every individual has a role to play. From the highest office in the land to the grassroots level, everyone must commit to ethical behavior and the rule of law. Steps to build this culture include: 1. Education and awareness. Promote civic education and awareness about the dangers of corruption and the importance of transparency. Knowledge empowers citizens to demand better governance. 2. Encourage whistleblowing. Create safe and anonymous channels for reporting corruption. Whistleblowers play a critical role in uncovering unethical practices, but they must be protected from retaliation. 3. Strengthen media and civil society. A free press and active civil society are essential for holding leaders accountable. Journalists and activists should be encouraged and protected in their work to expose corruption. 4. Promote ethical practices in business. The private sector also has a role in combating corruption by adhering to ethical business practices and avoiding conflicts of interest. 5. Implement strong oversight mechanisms. Regular audits, transparency in public spending, and independent oversight bodies help ensure that resources are used as intended and that any deviations are quickly identified and addressed. We want leaders who are honest, who work for the people, and who use our resources wisely. We are tired of seeing our wealth stolen while our communities suffer. Part 4, the vision for a prosperous Africa. At the end of the day, our goal is to see a prosperous Africa, an Africa where all citizens have access to quality healthcare, education, and opportunities to thrive. An Africa where public funds are used for the benefit of the many, not the few. An Africa where leaders are held accountable and the law is respected by all. We have the tools to make this vision a reality. By strengthening our legal frameworks and fostering a culture of ethical leadership, we can combat corruption and conflicts of interest effectively. But this requires commitment from our leaders, from our institutions, and from each and every one of us as citizens. We must remember that the fight against corruption and conflict of interest is not just a battle for today, it's a fight for the future of our continent. It's about laying the foundation for the next generation to inherit a more just, equitable, and prosperous Africa. Thank you for joining me today on The Awakening. Together, we can build the bridges to prosperity by insisting on transparency, accountability, and ethical leadership. Let's continue to demand better from our leaders and from ourselves. Join me next week as we explore more strategies and success stories from across the continent. Until then, keep striving for a better Africa. I'm Kelvin, and this has been the Awakening with Kelvin podcast.